Injury Reserve, we have By the Time I Get to Phoenix, it is 11 songs, 41 minutes long. Very eclectic record, very different.
This is
Injury
the
Reserve, we've reviewed Injury Reserve before, I believe,
Yeah,
right?
so this
I
is
think they're
I think we're finally starting to get into the point of Audioface where like we are now just like a lot of the times just gonna be talking about artists where we reviewed before, which is cool. Seasoned podcast here. But no, I want to say I don't know if we did a review of Injury Reserve's self-titled album in 2019,
I
but I
remember, I
definitely
know I listened to it,
I
but I
music
don't remember if it was.
recommendations them. Add them for music
Mm,
recommendations because you had a
that's
really
nice.
early
Thank you.
Jawbreaker with Rico Nasty. You had Jailbreak the
That's right. Yep.
Tesla with Amine. Love that song. You had
Song
New
was hard.
Hawaii with Shelly, formerly known as Drum, and I mean like it's a really interesting duo. Like I said, they were really pushing rap music and all those different things like as far as they could with
Mm-hmm.
production things. And the group was is Nathaniel Ritchie, Parker Corey, and I'm saying this because there was also Stepa J. Groggs, who last year, I want to say, passed away.
Yes.
Um, and so, yeah, it was on June 29th at age 32. So that was obviously, I was listening to some interviews with this. Injury Reserve had a lot of this album finished already, even before that. So it's not too much of a, like, Groggs' inspiration is definitely in the project, down to like
Mm-hmm.
some of the beginning songs, down to his voice still being there. But it's definitely that energy of having to reconcile with like losing your friend, losing like your close band member just when you're like coming up and getting sort of like some prominence and like some scenes here there. And like that presence is there in this record because Injury Reserve, like the self-titled project was experimental to begin with, right? But those were songs with features and like other artists on them.
Yeah.
This album has only one feature on it, and like a lot of times there's just barely any beats. Sometimes it's slowed down and sped up in the same song. Like this is very, very experimental.
It reminds me a bit of Death Grips. Not as mental as Death Grips. This is someone speaking who genuinely likes their music, by the way.
Me too, yeah.
Um, but it reminded me a bit of that where you're really taking rap and you're going onto the limit of experimenting with as much as you can. Example, like Outside, the first track is 6 minutes long and it's pretty expansive and airy and ethereal with how it sounds and everything. You have a lot of like hidden jazz beats and stuff in there. It's really muffled. It almost sounds like you have like a TV set from 1999 that's just like fuzzy and shit, and you have to hit it every time to make it work. It almost sounds like that within the beats and the layer in the background. You have Superman that, which I actually really like this track. It's chaotic, it's insane, but the lyrics you're like it's kind of popping up and back where it says, "You're saving me, you're saving me, yeah, you." And the vocals are all messed up along within the production, so you can almost see like somebody's mind or something going mental along within the track. I really like that track, but it gets you a sense of what you're going into this, where you're hearing things you've never necessarily heard, or if you have, it's been very limited hearing, or you might hear it on a track, but not for an entire record. Um, Experimenting with it.
That's for sure. Yeah. It's sort of the best way to listen to this album because like you're not gonna be able to like bop this at a party unless you're really depressed and also playing Donda at the party.
And or your Bam on a back to back set randomly, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna play Footwork in a Forest Fire because I want to see the room just scatter. Shout out
uh,
Bam for the podcast.
Bam enforcing social distancing on the dance floors way before it was cool. No, but it is footwork on a forest fire. Speaking of that, that is like also very chaotic with the drums in the middle, kind of just going
And,
around it. I did really like that though.
and that one of this that's the track that really reminded me of Death Grips because the way like the vocals are in there and it's really industrial sounding production, everything. I was like, oh wow, this is actually pretty cool with how it is. It's like really haunting and crazy, but good in a good way. It
And
really gets the point across of what it wants to sound.
that's exactly how I would describe the album: haunting and crazy, but in a good way.
Yeah, it's not
You've
gonna be
got
for everybody, but you can appreciate if you're not someone who likes experimental music. I really enjoy it. If you're a long time listener, you know that I like weird shit. That's why I have this podcast. Dan can appreciate a lot. it's nice to hear more and more people doing this, especially with rap, because the genre that we've had with lots of trap records, lots of rap records, everything that there's been a lot of like productions with the same, or you'll have 8 songs that sound exactly the same back to back to back, and then you put a double album on top of that. Um, it can get really monotonous and boring after a while, but it's nice to hear somebody go absolutely mental and say, you know what, I want to make and expand it to different horizons that you can't necessarily get within staying in your box. But when you do this, you can now give out whatever your ideas to other people too. And now other people can possibly get influenced by this record as well. And you might get some amazing art to come out of it. So you're like, oh wow, somebody might have heard sound. I've never necessarily heard it before in that context. And they could expand on that further.
Yeah,
And Injury Reserve as themselves can do that too, like they're down the road.
yeah, they can other artists can take the weird experimental ideas and go, okay, well, what if I made this like a song, like to add a 4/4 time signature that like more or less keeps up in pace. And like you see this in some of the Denzel Curry stuff. Recently he's
Yeah,
released some like very, very raw sounding, like on the edge of what you can consider a rap beat, but still very conventional, like you can rap to it kind of stuff. And so like that's just like as an example there of you can really meld the two and really do it well. But like, yeah, as you're going through the album, the hauntingness just sort of continues and continues. I
mhm,
my favorite, I think, a high point in like both the acknowledgement of the situation and like the musical culmination. I think the climax of the album is the second to last song, Knees. And it's a really beautiful track. You kind of get some of like the most raw sort of stream of consciousness lyrics and emotions that they've got in the record. And you also
I
get
can
a
see that.
song that's very I think sonically cohesive, considering like approachable, considering the rest of the record itself. Um, but yeah, just the way you hear everything in it, like um, even like with the sort of like drum matching the synth, kind of the way it
Mhm.
does that when it's like dun dun. It really creates that ambiance. Like it's haunting, but it's good, and it's a little chaotic, but you kind of just really feel like the edge of the emotion there when he's saying like tough pill to swallow. Like
Yeah.
it's I really loved listening to that, and you could just really feel the feeling in that too.
Yeah, I thought it's a good record. It's cohesive for as experimental as it is, which is good, and very difficult to do. There's a lot of different sounds in there that I like. Needs, yeah, it's a fantastic track. For being how long it is, it really gives you a journey of everything with the stream of conscious it is, and it keeps like building and building and building within the production of it as well, where you slowly add in more sounds, more little things here and there, which is pretty cool. And I love that little drum beat, and then it fades and then it kind of like muffles and the song dies out. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Wasn't expecting like this much madness in a record, but thoroughly impressed with it.
Yeah. Um it's like I said, it's got to be one of the weirdest things to create an album like this, given the situation of like Injury Reserve and like what happened. Yeah.
100%. Like I can't imagine me having someone who's kind of dealing with that right now, but having to do that musically is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess in a one way it's like closure because you're
I
kind
can
of
see
seeing
that.
out this project. But yeah, like
Now you got to figure out what you're gonna do from here, right? You're like, okay,
yeah.
what's the next step? What's the next thing?
But that being said, like that's not something whereas with other artists I'm like, "Oh, I don't know where they go from here." The great thing about Injury Reserve being as experimental as they are is they're not afraid to push those boundaries. And in
You
fact,
could go so many directions.
I think Sean, kind of what you alluded to, their next projects will probably be more of like, okay, how can we make that chaos work? And maybe I
Yep.
don't think they're trying to be mainstream per se, but I'd like to see them get back to like, let's bring some artists on here, let's actually do some bars and like spit back and forth here, but still keep that kind of like fun sound, still keep that trying to voyage out and find new different things because I'm always looking for new sounds in rap. Like we were just talking about earlier in this podcast, how trap is getting a lot better, but it's still very, very repetitive. And
Yeah.
so,
Still a
um,
lot. Still a lot of work to do with it.
you go to Injury Reserve, you go to artists like that, producers like Sophie, for example, who
Hmm.
were pushing those boundaries and not afraid to push those boundaries. And years after that, those influences show up in pop sometimes, and you like those and you don't like those, and then they show up in other places in rap and indie, etc. And that's where we just get the really new thing. That's what really creates positive feedback in the music ecosystem. And so, hats off to Injury Reserve for against all odds doing that and creating an album that I think, yeah, will be good for the musical ecosystem going forward, for the creative process of other musicians, and just like a really profoundly good project about loss and the experience of that.
Yep, absolutely agree. Arbitrary skill, bad excuse for STDs. This is the yeah. I had to go to a gas station bathroom, and caught it there.
This is the well, clearly you gave me something.
Oh shit!